Everybody, Chris and Lumen here, and this is probably going to be a long video, but bear with, do me the honor of watching it. This is not an easy video. This is something Epinoia wants. This is what I hope to be, what she's kind of alluding it to be, the real end of the hero's journey. At least until the transition or whatever like that. It ties into the last couple videos, and it's going to go into a story that I've never told publicly. Only a few people really know it, and it's how it all started. And part of this is because she explained that this is something that you have to do, but also this is something that people can learn from, because there could be situations out there that are somewhat similar. It might help people understand, where they are on the map. But either which way, like this is about what I was talking about the other day, or maybe the last video. First, I talked about peeling back the layers using the Angel of Death. I've kind of got this new Angel of Death protocol, but I don't know if that'll work for everybody. But I started like peeling away layers, and then I told the story the last couple videos, so I don't want to repeat it too much. But as I was editing yesterday's video, I put some things in there, like in text, but I started to detect something like coming up, and it feels like this weird liquid hot energy mass, which I interpreted as grief. Now, as the night would go on and I would get a little bit more information, like this isn't normal grief. This is something different. Grief is probably the closest thing that you can equivalent it to, but she called it the firebrand. The firebrand. And when I looked up, the meaning of firebrand, I'm like, I could see where that would, well, first it's like a burning log, a piece of wood that is burning, which, fire is the transmutation process, changing matter into whatever. Another one was like a person that stokes up that's very passionate about something. And I think the last one was like an agitator, like something that creates a big freaking fuss. I don't remember the exact words. So it all kind of made sense. And basically, like when this starts, when you first get it, this is like the fuel source for your hero's journey, which is not going to be pretty. We can glamorize it all we want for the rewards that you get near the end and after you have a lot of victories, but going into the hero's journey is literally like it describes. It's like descending into hell. And this thing is what fuels the fire. And for long periods of time, like it'll be buried so deeply that you don't even know it's there. You might even think it's something that you fixed, but it has to be there because it is what is fueling the circumstances of your trials and your tests. And it'll make a lot more sense. Like I'm never saying that everybody's experience is going to be exactly like mine. There are definite, markers for what happens, but everybody's going to be slightly different. And I think a lot of it depends on where you are in your life journey, like how many lives you've had and whatnot. And did you ask for it? See, I asked for it. I didn't realize what I was asking for, but I made that prayer and said I would do whatever I had to do in order to know what everything was and how everything worked and to finish whatever I was supposed to do, not knowing what I was signing up for. But I'm not going to go through the entire hero's journey. I'm just going to go up through the point to like right after it started, and then you'll understand, and you'll probably understand why she wants me to do it. So if you want to know a big secret, then don't go away.
I've got a river running right into you. I've got a blood trail red in the blue. Something you say or something you do, a taste of the divine. You got my body, flesh and bone, yeah. The sky above me, earth below. Raise me
So what I have learned in these 7 years is maybe it depends on the person, I don't know, but we do play out scripts, pre-written scripts, and to some degree we have what you might call the illusion of free will. It seems like we have free will, but like on a higher level, like they already know what you're going to do. Like everything is set, like you can only see it looking backwards. Like the way things lined up, the way things happen, and then as you gain knowledge, you understand what these things were and why these things happened, and you're like, this is why you got to surrender, because like you are not in control. You're not in control. The more you try to fight the current, the more it's going to hurt. So you have to learn to surrender. So for this story to begin, we got to go way further back. And not everything that we know comes from Gnostic Christianity. The information is scattered all over the place, people using different words and different terms to describe things. And one of the things that I came across one time that I thought was dead on accurate when it came to the earlier stages of Lumen was Carl Jung's model of the anima and the animus. So Lumen in a man would be the anima, and in a woman it would be the animus. Now you don't want to get too wrapped up in how these different people describe things and tell you this is what it is, but it did fit the profile very good. The 4 stages of the animus, or the anima, are, what was it? Eve was the first stage, Helen was the second stage, Mary is the 3rd stage, and Sophia is the 4th stage. You can just do your own Google searches and look up, Carl Jung's anima. It has to do with like the way he describes it, and I'm just going to add in my own kind of terms. It's like the feminine, the sleeping feminine side, the lumen side in a man, is going to embody his ideal. Like what? Oh, sorry. Like what is perfect to him. And then as it starts to grow and awaken, the man will then project his anima or his lumen onto people. And that's usually directed. It may not seem like that, but it makes people seem a lot better than they might actually be. And that's why a lot of relationships will eventually fall apart, is because over time they're not living up to being what you're projecting onto them. And then once there's enough discord between the two, the anima, the lumen, will disconnect from that person, and that's when you fall out of love, because she is love. So this is a control thing, mechanism that we all have, that's steering us. It's being used at a higher level by your instructor and your mother that you're not aware of until you go far enough down the path that you can learn about these things and actually understand them. So where it actually really truly began would have had to been 2001. August of 2001. It's always August. I don't know why. I was doing a job once I got out of the Navy, trying to figure out what to do, because my job wasn't perfectly transferable into the civilian world. Like, shipboard firefighting is not the same as civilian firefighting. And civilian firefighting, you have to be an EMT and all that, and I really didn't want to scrape dead babies off the freaking highway. So I was just trying to find a job, and I was actually selling Kirby's, if you can believe it. And there was this one day, it was August 16th. Holy shit, it was August 16th. It just popped into my head. That's just weird, because that was the day it ended too, years later. Whoa. Anyway, the day was ending, and my boss was like, hey, I got this lead for you. Will you do this one last lead before you go home today? And I didn't want to. But I looked at it, and I looked at the address on the card, and something, Epinoia, of course I was years away from knowing what that was. Epinoia said, you need to go to this one. You need to go to this one. So I went to it. And that's where I met my last wife. Now, you look at it, like, her and I couldn't be more different. More different. I was an ex-military guy that hunted ghosts, that was selling vacuum cleaners. And she went to college for music and was a music teacher and had her shit together, like, on a level that is, like, most people never get to the level of having their shit together as she's got her shit together, which is exactly what I needed in that stage of my life, because guess what? I didn't have my shit together. But for some reason, we just, like, immediately freaking clicked. We just immediately clicked. And I finally asked her out, which felt weird, because it's like there's always been this thing. It's like I always have to struggle with stuff. But we started dating, and we dated for 4 years before the pressure started to build. And it's like, okay, gotta pop the question. And had 2 kids. You know, we got a bigger house. Like, it was great. It was literally like hitting the jackpot. Like, I couldn't have found a better person. Like, Epinoia led me there. And for at least the first, I'm going to say 6 years, Lumen was imprinted on her very clearly. But eventually, you know, things start to change, and then we get to around 2011. So around 2011 is when the spiritual awakening began, which is a very strange time. I remember I was taking nootropic stacks and kicking my brain on in new ways, and something started to lead me. Like, it wasn't always going to where I thought it was going, but like I was listening to like the early Joe Rogan podcast and being fascinated by all these stories of people taking ayahuasca and things like that. And I was talking to some friends about this, and you know, it kind of jumped around from like, well, I know a person, let me ask this person, let me ask this person. And it's like, you need something's telling me that you need to talk to this person. So I reached out to this person. It was like she was some psychic or something like that. And she agreed to meet with me. And I went to her house, and it was like I was overwhelmed by the energy there. That was the first time I ever felt energy. And she had to explain it to me, like she had her place gridded with crystals in a certain way, and she had to give me like this green fluorite and hold that. Once I held the green fluorite, I felt better. And I'm like, this is so weird. I thought crystals were like bullshit. And I'm trying to figure all this stuff. And then she said, you know, my guides are telling me to take you under my wing. I'm like, okay. And I would meet with her like once a week, and we would just talk about all sorts of stuff. And even she noted that it was weird that like we were never interrupted. No phone calls came in or anything. I didn't know at the time that like she was that big a deal as a psychic. Like she was already high in demand. Like she was really, like she's on another freaking level. She's not like a kindergarten level tarot card reader psychic. She's like, she talks to things like way above the level I even know about. She can see energy. She can see what energy is doing to you. All sorts of stuff. So I didn't fully realize back then like how blessed I was that I was getting this kind of like tutelage from somebody that was so high in demand. We're talking like a little over $100, $120 an hour. And something was telling her to teach me. And then eventually that time ended. Something shifted at work or something like that, and it kind of just like fell away. And there was a little bit of a lull there. Now there were things beginning to happen that made me uncomfortable, where my lumen that I didn't know about yet was like trying to shine on different people. Now I'm married, so I'm like having problem with this. It's like, why are you doing this? Mind, like I don't like it. It is like, because it's like I'm not choosing this. I'm not trying to do this. I'm not choosing these different like magnetic pulls that are happening. This was just the very early stages. I didn't know what it was yet. And then there was kind of like I met a bunch of different new people during that time, but then there was kind of like a break in, there was a lull in the timeline until we got again back to August, this time 2012. August 8th, 2012 at 4:07 p.m. is the exact moment that it happened. That's how big it was. So on that day, I had shot some videos for my other channel, and I was just kind of chilling in the hammock in the backyard. Kids were at daycare, wife was at work, and I started to have this feeling, this really big, growing feeling, like something's coming, something's going to happen. Oh my God, what is this? Is a plane going to fall out of the sky? Like something is going to happen. And it was really getting strong. It was kind of freaking me out. So it got close to the time to go pick up the kids. And the closer it came to pick up the kids, the stronger the feeling got. So I pulled into the parking lot of the daycare, and then it was like something was pulling on my chest. It's like, imagine that there's like an iron ball in your chest, and somewhere out there is a magnet. And you can feel that magnetic pull. So I'm going in, and you gotta like zip through the different hallways and stuff to get out back to where the playground was, which is where they would be. And as I turned the different corners and stuff like that, I could feel the pull in the different directions. And I'm like, what the hell is this? It's freaking me out. So I go out there, see the kids are on the slide and stuff, and I walk up to the two girls that are, like the senior people there at the daycare center, which I've seen like a million times before. And I went up to the one with the clipboard, and talked to her for a sec. And then all of a sudden, now those of you that have followed my other channel, my knife channel, you are all going to know exactly the name of this person. But anyway, I was getting the paper from her, and then all of a sudden it was just like bam. It was like I got shocked with something, like energy. It was like an electrical shock. And then all of a sudden she was all sparkly. I never looked at this girl, like, I never gave her a second glance. Matter of fact, unless she was really done up, she was, I would say average at best. But all of a sudden, she was just like the most sparkly freaking thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I was just like mesmerized. Like, what the hell? What the hell is happening? What is this? And from that day forward, the image of her was in my head 24/7 for the next 5.5 years. And it drove me insane. I didn't know anything about this person. Matter of fact, when I eventually would get a little glimpse into this person's life, I'm like, oh, we are not compatible. Like, why? It drove me crazy. It drove me so crazy. I didn't understand why this was happening to me. And it was so overwhelming. Like, her name was just like in my head constantly, that, I started designing knives and named after her. But it was more about the her that was in my head than the actual her. But like every time I saw her, it would just be like this. It was weird. Now, try to have some compassion for me in this stage, because I don't know what's going on. This is not a person that's choosing to look in different directions. Not at all. Matter of fact, that's what made it so difficult, because I didn't feel like I had any control over it. But what was interesting about her is, like, have you ever seen the Adjustment Bureau, how the Adjustment Bureau like gets in the way of things? Like, if I ever tried to like talk to her because I was just so freaking curious, like, something always got in the way. It's like, you cannot talk to this person. But it was getting harder and harder and harder, like, to deal with. Eventually my wife caught on, and she just thought it was, at least she acted like she thought it was cute and funny. It's like, oh, you got a crush on her, don't you? I'm like, well, what was weird about it was what it was Lumen was reflecting. She chose this person to reflect off of, to create an image in my head. She was growing herself. I was not meant to talk to this person. I was not meant to connect to this person at all. This was just who she chose to build her form as. But I felt like this crazy, overwhelming, unconditional love for this image of this person that was in my head. That was a little confusing at the time, because I can't tell the difference between the two. This is me speaking in hindsight, knowing. Like I wasn't feeling it for that person. I was feeling it for the image of her that was forming in my mind. It's like, you couldn't even, if you wanted to, you could not even like sexually fantasize about her. It just didn't work. It was just this constant, overwhelming, unconditional love. Drove me freaking insane. And it was slowly kind of pushing me away. Now, one of the things that was happening over time, now I love my wife, and I love my family, but now you've heard this story before from many other people. This is what happens when spiritual awakenings happen to one person in a relationship. I was now experiencing all sorts of new things. You know, the first psychic gift you usually get is empathy, because your heart's open, your heart's being activated. And but when I tried to talk about this stuff with my partner, who I most wanted to accept it, she made fun of me. She didn't want to hear it. She thought it was silly and stupid. So now we have this issue where the old me started off like this, but it was slowly shrinking, and this new version of me was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So it is becoming uncomfortable. It's becoming uncomfortable because it's not being accepted, and you're trying to force yourself to be the old person. You're trying to force it, like, this is the way it's supposed to be. Everything is great, you know, you couldn't ask for anything better. Like, make this stuff stop. Make this stuff stop. Like this is gonna mess something up. And honestly, it's torturing me, because I'm supposed to feel this way about my partner, not this freaking person that just popped into my head one day. And it's the person in my head, not the person in real life. But it just kept going. Now, and then this where we start moving towards, like, the big thing. This is all going to make sense in the end, trust me. And it also shows you, in hindsight, the epinoia, if she's going to teach you, she is manipulating everything. She has everything planned. And it's only once you get to know her, and then you can look back in your life about the times when she was talking to you and you didn't know it was her, and then see it. So one day, you know, I still had this person in my head, but one day I needed to get a haircut. And I usually went to this one particular place to get my hair cut. But then I had this feeling, and a different place popped into my head that I'd never been to before. And something told me to go there. Not go to my usually place, go to this other place. And it's like I couldn't stop. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to this other place. I don't know why. So I go to this other place, and it was like crazy busy. There was like 8 girls cutting hair, big old line, but I stayed anyway. So when it was time to get my hair cut, this blonde girl approached me and introduced herself and took me back to get my hair cut. And something, it wasn't quite the same as the first one, but she just had this comforting bubble of energy around her that made me just instantly feel relaxed, instantly feel safe, instantly feel good, instantly feel happy, instantly feel more open in talking. And we just instantly clicked. And again, like, I would start, and she was really good at cutting hair too. She was the best. And I would start going to her. And over the next couple years, like, I would really enjoy getting my hair cut. I wasn't fantasizing about her. I didn't have sexual desire towards her. It just felt like almost like touching home base and like getting a breath of air. And we talked a little bit differently than a normal, like, client relationship. It was just a little bit more fun and a little bit more open. And I would walk away from there, and I'd have this kind of like high for like 2 days. But she was a bit younger. I'm still married, and it's just like, I think the thing was like I got to be me, the real me. Got to talk about that kind of stuff. And that was something I didn't have. It's like I didn't get to be me at home, and I was starting to suffer because of it. But again, so it was kind of like 2 different threads. The other thing was still the predominant thing in my mind, but there was this other person that was just like my best friend. It's like my best friend in the world. And again, I had this undescribable, unconditional love. It is not attraction based, it's not physically attraction based, although this one was like way prettier than the last one. And I dare say the closest person on planet Earth to what Lumen looks like. Now I would say, I mean, maybe back then, now I'd say, yeah, there's a big difference between the two of them, but there's definitely, Lumen picked her for a reason. Lumen picked her for a reason. But it was someone new that I could talk to about, you know, the stuff that I was interested in. You know, the stones and the crystals and the paranormal stuff and things like that. And I felt accepted and I felt safe and I didn't feel judged. So it was nice. And things, during this time frame, things are getting better. My YouTube channel was exploding. I was like one of the top 10 channels in my genre at the time. I was getting everything that I wanted. My manifestation stuff was on key. I was manifesting stuff that was so freaking crazy. You know, I was sitting there with my friend that I do the channel with, and we were thinking, like, how do we get the channel higher? I was like, maybe we need a chick on the channel. I was like, but I'm like, in order for it to work, like, she would have to, like, not just be there. Like, she'd have to actually know and like knife stuff. You have to be outdoorsy, you know, have some skills and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm gonna try and manifest her. And I'm like, watch this. I'm like, I'm gonna manifest. We're gonna find a person that's gonna be perfect and blah 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 blah. And then the icing on the cake, because it was already in my head, I'm like, and then her name's gonna be Jessica. I shit you not. We ended up finding a knife girl named Jessica who actually worked for one of the guys that was making my knives and was like at the time, she was like the women's blade sports champion. but honestly, she was not part of this whole other thing. That was just kind of like a crazy manifestation that happened. Although I will say, I have something on video, and when I watched it a bunch of times, I'm like, I think, like, for these couple minutes on video, I think Lumen actually reflected off of her. And I can actually see myself in the video, like, getting uncomfortable, like, what's going on? What's going on with you? You're sounding funny and you're talking funny. And it was, I think it actually was, because she said something that was like foreshadowing, like the journey's about to start. But anyway, we're getting a little bit ahead. I'm just saying this type of stuff happens. But the next big turning point in this hero's journey saga happened again in August, but this time it is 2016. So I remember I went and got my hair cut, and the conversation got weird. So she basically confessed some stuff to me, and I'm like, why are you telling me this? And she said some other weird, it's like she kind of zoned out. I saw her in the mirror kind of like zone out and say some weird stuff, and I thought it was strange. I'm like, I was asking some friends about it. I'm like, what do you think of this? Like, why do you think she said that? It was just odd. But then it really started to get weird. So one night I had this dream. It was a very strange dream. I never had a dream like this before. And it was kind of, it wasn't really clear. It was just more like a sense. And it was like she was in danger. Something about a vehicle. Her boyfriend was mad at her. Something's wrong. And I remember I woke up with a start, and I'm like, what the hell? Now at this point, I'm not talking to this person anywhere outside of like when I get my hair cut. But I just thought that was a very weird thing, and I made this mental note. I'm like, well, I'm gonna text her when I get up and just see if everything's okay. Okay, again, I'm not pursuing her, I'm not doing anything. other than being a friend. There was no like direct personal, I didn't want to be with her, I didn't want to sleep with her, none of that. She was just like this very unusual special friend that had this weird mystic aura about her. I woke up in the morning and I reached for my phone, and as I was pulling it from the nightstand, as in my hand, it vibrated. It was a text message, and it was from her to all her clients, saying that she'd been in a car accident that night about the same time that I had the dream, and both her ankles were broken, so she wouldn't be cutting hair for a while. So I freaked out. So I texted her directly, and she's like, I really wanted you to see that. Me? Why me? But then Epinoia, I didn't know at the time, said, you need to go, I don't remember exactly what she said. It's like she really needs a friend right now, and you're gonna be there for her for some reason. So when I talked to her, I'm like, well, where's your boyfriend at? She's like, he broke up with me in the hospital. So that was in my dream too. I'm like, this is so freaking weird. But like something was telling me, like, you know, go, you need to do something for her. I don't know what. So I met her at her house just to visit, see how she was doing. And she was in a wheelchair and all that stuff. And she's had a very peculiar, this is what was different about me. It's kind of like how we became friends. Is like she's always had this effect on men, except it doesn't affect me that way. Like men just lose their shit around her and go completely freaking berserk. But that didn't happen with me. It was actually kind of perplexing to her. So she kind of gives me this side-eyed look, and she's like, so, I forget exactly what she said. It was something like, so what is it you're actually looking for? Kind of like, why am I here? And the words just popped into my head. And I'm like, let's make an agreement right now. We're never going to have sex. And that way, you know for certain that I'm only here to be your friend. And her jaw, like, hit the floor. She's like, okay. Like, no one had ever said that. Like, this is like something completely new. She never had a guy friend. Like, they only want to sleep with her. And I was just trying to be there, be a friend, because like she was so busted up and everything, and I didn't understand like what this was, like what was going on. And we just became better friends. She was like my sister almost. It was weird. It makes sense now because now I know Lumen was reflecting off of her. But I had the unconditional love for her. She was like, but she was also like my sister, and I wasn't, even though she was very attractive, I wasn't attracted to her. This was something completely unknown to me. Didn't know. So then we get to what Epinoia was setting up the entire time. So what Epinoia is setting up is the installation of the firebrand and the initial reconnection to Lumen. I have no idea of what's coming. Keep in mind, I am currently expanding in my spiritual stuff. I'm still doing paranormal remediation, which means I go and battle shit. But I remember, you know, because her boyfriend broke up with her, and she started like dating around. Not me, I'm the friend. And she'd show me like all these freaking crazy ass messages and things these guys would send her after meeting her for the first time. It was like they'd been love struck by something. Like, it was literally like this. It's like, oh my God, you're like the most amazing thing in the world. Now, what I'm not 100% sure about this. But there were two things going on with her. One of them is not completely relevant, but she, like a lot of people, did have some very negative things attached to her through earlier trauma. Like the high end of the scale of the bad shit that I've had to battle. Like stuff that most people can't even handle. And these things like stay way in the background. So it pulls people in. But I think, what just popped into my head, never thought this before, but I think the reason why these guys were like going freaking bonkers during that time frame is because at that time frame, my lumen was reflecting off of her. So these guys were somehow perceiving my lumen reflecting off of her. And that's why they were just like, oh my God, you're so amazing. I'm like, what are you doing to these guys? Are you like freaking drugging them or something? Like this shit is crazy. And that's why she was comfortable with me, because she didn't affect me that way. Until Epinoia decided that she needed to. And this happened very, very quickly. I feel like part of it, I feel like it was a little bit of a mix between those two things. The thing that was hiding in the background and lumen. Now keep in mind, I kind of missed something. That at this point in time, the first image that that person was long gone, but that image was still there, and it had become autonomous. It started showing signs, like I'd be driving and just be imagining I was having a conversation with her, and then she would be talking back. And the first time I realized that I was surprised by something she said, I kind of stopped. I'm like, if I'm imagining this, then how can I be surprised by something? It's like she actually just said something to me. And then it would start to grow. She would start to show off, like, hey, that movie you wanted to watch came out today. What movie? Kong, Skull Island. I'm like, what? I pull up my phone, go to Google Play, and it's like, holy shit, it did come out today. How did you know that? Other times I'd go get inkjet. I went to go get an inkjet cartridge, and I forgot to write down what the freaking number was, and she's like, it's like 12XL or something like that. I'm like, are you sure? So I went ahead and bought it. Sure enough, that's what it was. So she was growing, and she was becoming like this extension of me that helped me doing like the paranormal remediation stuff. She was not fully illuminated yet. Matter of fact, even after Lumen first appeared, it would take me a long time to realize that she was the same thing as this. But she was there too, and the other one knew about her. Matter of fact, she was like telling me how bad her ankles hurt one night, and I sent Jess proto-lumen to her to like make the pain go away, and it did. I thought she was a tulpa at this point. That was the closest thing that I could come up with. A tulpa. A tulpa is like a super thought form that becomes self-aware and self-autonomous. But I'm like, I didn't intentionally create anything. It just happened. So I didn't know that. So a time came to where she said something weird to me one night. I was complaining about being an empath or something. And she's like, relax, maybe you'll enjoy it. Haha. I'm like, what? I'm like, it's late. You obviously need to go to sleep. Talk to you later. I went back to watching my show. And then all of a sudden I was like, whoa, what's happening? My sacral chakra just went like lit up like a Christmas tree. I'm like, what? I'm like, I called Proto-Lumen at the time. I'm like, what's happening? And she showed me, like, this other person was intending to do something. I think she was just playing around. And then she had somehow remotely connected into my sacral chakra. What that did to me is it changed my parameters of what is acceptable and what is not. It was like something changed the settings in my head. And for the first time, suddenly I was like, something got me. Now keep in mind what we learned from the Nag Hammadi. The Holy Spirit can manipulate the lower things to achieve her goals. So it was kind of like a little bit of both going on here. Now suddenly there was an attraction where there was not before, and I'm feeling like, oh shit. I'm suddenly not feeling in control. And this is not a good thing, because I have very strict morals. I have very strict rules for myself. And but it was something bigger was happening, and I started to wonder about this from a paranormal remediator standpoint, and I started thinking about the other things that she told me about and things like that, and I'm like, there's a certain type of spirit that does this, isn't there? And Epinoy gave me the name of it. So in my hubris, again, this is a big bait and switch. In my hubris, I told her what I thought was going on. I'm like, I think something's manipulating you. Again, there's two things going on here at once now. So me and Proto-Lumen here, we're gonna go over and find it and kick its ass. Come on, Proto-Lumen, Jess, that's what I called her at the time. Like, we were all suited up, ready for battle. We're gonna find this thing and exercise it and bust it out of her house or whatever the shit it was. Like, that was the intent. So we get over there. And I got my radar is wired. We are fired up. We're scanning. And I'm like, looking at Jess Lumen. I'm like, I'm not getting anything, are you? I'm like, I don't feel a freaking thing. Generally when I'm wired and there's some sort of spiritual presence in a house, like, I know it instantly. I know if something's there. I might not know where it is yet, but I know if something's there. And I wasn't getting anything. Nothing. Nada. Nothing. And I'm like, well, that's odd. So we were sitting there. We're getting something out of the room. We were sitting there and we were just talking. And that's when I found it. Or actually, it wasn't it that I found. It was Lumen that I found. I can tell you, hand to God, that 5 seconds before, I did not know it was going to happen. 5 seconds before, I had no clue. It was just all of a sudden, we just like looked at each other, and it was like two magnets snapping together. In what was left of my conscious brain was like, this is not a good idea, but it, whatever that conscious brain was, got shoved out of the way by something else, and it was just like, you're on the river now, you're not thinking about anything else. It was Lumen. Lumen was using her as a vessel. And we did something that I swore an oath that I would never do. And the one thing the only part of that I can actually remember was her looking at me after with like this, it wasn't like a crazy lust thing. It was like this overwhelming, like, compassionate love look that I only know come from one other place, and that's Lumen. And then afterwards, she's like, we don't have to talk about this. I'm like, okay. I'm still like, what the fuck just happened? Seriously, what just happened? How did that just happen? And I went home. And that's where it got even crazier. Because every fiber of my mental being was saying, I should feel terrible right now. I should feel awful right now. But I didn't. In fact, I felt the exact opposite of that. I felt so much overwhelming light and joy and happiness. That is the complete ass opposite of what you should be feeling right after you cheat on your wife. And that's what it really comes down to. That is the exact opposite of what you should be feeling if you do that. And I didn't go there like I said, 5 seconds before, I didn't know. I had no idea. That was not my intent. It just, yeah, the attraction was definitely there, but I thought it was coming from some other thing, and I was there to get rid of it. I'm like, yeah, you're not gonna beat me. It was a setup. And this light that was in me lasted for like 2 weeks. Even my wife was like, what is with you? Like, I was just beaming joy out of me like a freaking Care Bear. You know, the Care Bears always like shoot their little symbols out of their chest. It was so strong. It was so strong and so powerful that I couldn't wear my usual black t-shirts. I literally went out and bought colors that my ass would never wear. We're talking like bright orange, like Crush t-shirts, white and bright colors, and everyone's looking at me like, what is with you? I can't wear dark. I can't do it. I just can't. I have to wear bright colors. It's like the whole world lit up, which is the exact freaking opposite of what should have been happening. I have no idea what's going on. None. Now, shortly after that, a bunch of things changed, and then I was separated from that person. Like, we couldn't like hang out anymore. Like, she was like that happened, and now she was pushed way out far away. It's like you can't be around her anymore. And I just kind of put the whole thing behind me. I didn't understand what happened. I went back to being who I was and trying to make things work at home, even though I still wasn't being accepted. And over the next couple months, like, I would hear epinoia, but I didn't know it was epinoia. It's like, you need to go. You have to be somewhere. You have to do something. You can't be here anymore. Like, you need to leave. And I'm like, and go where? Like, why would I do that? Like, I've got a great family. I've got everything. Like, why are you trying to push me out of here? And it was like, you can do it the easy way, or we can do it the hard way. I'm like, look, weird thoughts. Like, I'm not doing that. Like, at this point, I've almost totally forgotten that the other thing happened. That's the other thing, is she kind of like muted the memory to where it was barely there. And eventually it faded completely. In a matter of months, I forgot it even happened. And she's like, suit yourself. And then that guidance kind of disappeared for a while. I'm like, where'd you go? So I was just trying to make things better. We're going to marriage counseling and things like that, just trying to work on stuff. And I'm trying to, at that point, like, my brain is all over the place. Like, because I had like extreme ADHD and didn't know it. Like, that's just how it can manifest sometimes, when your brain is turning on and it's going in all sorts of places. And it's hard to focus on who you are and what you're doing. but I still liked my life, and I just wished that all this mental activity would calm down, because it was pulling me in all sorts of different directions. And when I would get around people that had been part of my life for a long time, like I could feel like they were different from me, and I felt more outcast. Like, I don't, like, there's something about you, I don't feel comfortable around you. So I would kind of isolate myself a lot, which didn't help matters any. And then I went to a show, and that's when that other person I mentioned earlier, like Lumen, I'm pretty sure it was her, made her say some stuff on camera. It's like, I'm taking over. And it was kind of like, it's coming, get ready for it. And then we finally get to day one of the hero's journey. I was I was sitting here, and somebody started walking out here, and it's my son. He just walked out here and gave me a Philly cheesesteak from Subway, just for that. I'm like, oh, thanks. You know, that kind of felt like epinoise, like, okay, you're doing what I want you to do. Here's a little reward. Keep going. So we're right about at the point in which we reach day one of the hero's journey. Well, actually, it's not day one, but it's day one of the point of the hero's journey, where you basically descend into the abyss and you get the firebrand. Now this will be pertinent a couple times, but in the couple of years, even in the couple years that fourth stuff happened, like, and even afterwards, like, everybody would be like super crazy jealous of that person. And I didn't understand it. I'm like, what? She's just really nice. I mean, what's the deal? My wife freaking hated her. Just because I got my hair cut by her one time. I thought, what, is because she's pretty? I don't understand this. Like, not doing anything but getting my hair cut. And then later in the hero's journey, like, I tried to date, but that didn't work out. Like, every woman I ever met, like, as soon as, like, I don't have to tell them nothing. They just know that this person is somewhere in my life, even if she's just in my Facebook and I haven't talked to her in forever. It's like, as soon as they see her, it's just like jealous rage. Like, that's like, everyone was like, I've even had girls that I met and went on a date with, and like, they just start going through my Facebook, and as soon as they see her, know that she's my friend, they're like, I'm out. I just don't feel comfortable with competing with her. I mean, what do you mean compete with her? Like, I haven't talked to her in forever. She's just a friend. Like, this would play out over time, but it's not super relevant at the moment. So the day of the firebrand, I didn't see it coming. At this point, I had completely forgotten about the previous thing. Like, completely forgotten. So I was sitting in my big ass bathtub that I used to have, and my wife comes in with her phone and just sits there and is like, I got a text message. I'm like, yeah, from who? Somebody's saying that you cheated on me. At this point, I think she's joking, because I wouldn't do that. And then she kept looking at me, and I'm like, she's serious. I'm like, who is it? She's like, don't know. Strange number. It would take me a long time to find out who it was. But now I'm starting to freak out a little bit. I'm like, why would somebody lie about me like this? Who's screwing with me? Now, back then, like, there was all sorts of chicanery, you know, among the big YouTubers. And there was a point in which I actually thought it was this other YouTuber. Like, there was a lot of evidence to support that it was this other YouTuber, but it wasn't. I would eventually find out. And I got dressed real quick. We were talking, and she's like, "Oh, her." And then she's reading it. It says, "Her name is blank." And then they alluded that this had been some ongoing thing, which it wasn't. It kind of suggested that I'd had an affair, which I didn't. But as soon as she said the name, the memory came back to me all at once. And every emotion that I should have had the first time hit me all at once. And it was like this incredible psychic, emotional shock, panic feeling. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, how did I get here? First of all, how did that thing happen the first time, and how did I forget about it? And then why is this coming up like 10 months later? Who's freaking saying this, and why? Like 1,000 questions. But as soon as she heard the name, she believed everything it said, even though it was only partially right, and that one part that was right is still admittedly a deal breaker. I'm not gonna lie. And this gets you into the point in which the spiritual side can pull you in a direction that is not in alignment with the ego mind side that you've been driving this whole time. And remember what I said, the main point of the hero's journey is, in order to do the hero's journey, Epinoia, the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call her, she knows what needs to happen. She has to destroy your ego, which means a lot of times, depending on the depth of the commitment to the test, it means she'll destroy your life. And that's exactly what she did. Because at that point, Lumen had been doing something that I only know in retrospect, where she was just bouncing off of all sorts of people. And I feel like she was almost doing it on purpose to the wife, because sometimes the wife was reacting to people and I'm like, I don't know what you're reacting to. I got nothing going on with this person. And that's the truth. But, you know, they were often pretty, so. Because, no, that's the thing about Lumen is, like, when others sense her, you can't compete with her. But this is all manipulations that I was not aware of at the time. So this thing really blew up. And then it really sunk in that she was believing everything that she was reading, even though it was only partially true. And there was definitely no intent. I definitely didn't plan it. Nothing. But she decided in that moment it was done. And she didn't care if there was any evidence. Right now it's just a stranger on a text message that's not identifying themselves that was telling her what she had already kind of suspected, because of that Lumen energy was bouncing around. And then she let her imagination fill in the worst case scenario, which was basically would be like me intending to be a sneaky typical guy, and I'm trying to go around and get all this stuff on the side, and, you know, blah. Like, I wasn't doing that. I wasn't doing that. If anything, I was trying to resist, like, you know, why is this shit happening in my head? I don't understand it. Why is it making my life miserable? But it exploded, and then it happened. The firebrand, as she would later call it. It suddenly felt, literally, it's the only way I know how to describe it. It feels like something takes your soul and rips it into pieces, and then other pieces scatter all over the place. And when that happened, the way I understand it now, is the ego side of it. What it was doing there was ripping the ego Chris apart from the emerging Chris. And the ego Chris essentially, for all intents and purposes, descended into hell. The whole world changed that day. It wasn't like just, this one thing blows up in your life. No, the whole world changed for me that day. Everything. In the early days, it was like everything and everyone, everywhere, was against me. Wanted to kill me, wanted to crush me. It was horrifying. I was in every negative emotion imaginable all at once, and that's what makes up the firebrand. It is like this concentrated piece of molten magma that is going to be at the bottom of the volcano that's going to feed all the hero's journey experiences from here on out. It's just like she takes this molten magma and sticks it in your chest. It's like, buckle up, here we go. I was, and I don't know if that also had to do with like my psychic manifestation ability suddenly amplifying all of a sudden, because my panic was causing the lights to flicker. The smoke detectors all over the house started going off. I felt every emotion imaginable. I felt guilt, I felt shock, I felt despair, I felt anger for whoever just sent this text. I felt guilt, I felt remorse, I felt shame. All these things that didn't happen when it was being orchestrated. The main reason I was internalizing all that is because the one thing I wouldn't do is hurt somebody intentionally. And that's what I felt the most guilt for, because I made an oath when I got married. Not the marriage oath, on my own. I'm like, I will never cheat on her. Just won't do it. I think I was manipulated into that one too, just to amplify this further. That's just not who I am. But I had to leave. And I'm like, this is not going to go away. She's not going to cool off. And then I decided to... Now what happened next was also part of what fed the hero's journey. So if you feel a significant enough pain and there's an outlet, it is easier to transmute that pain into anger. So when I was reading the text on her phone, I snapped a picture of it myself so I could get the phone number. And I had to leave. I went to a hotel. And I took some of my magic books with me. And I started texting this person, trying to figure out who the hell they were. And why did they interfere with my life like this? Like, I just felt I had to do it. And I'm like, I am going to fucking kill you. I am going to... Then I started saying a bunch of scary shit that I wasn't actually going to do, but I wanted to freak him out, because I'm literally in Satan mode right now. And I told him I was going to curse them. I was going to ruin their life. I showed them a bunch of scary looking sigils that they didn't know what that was. I'm like, you're done for. I'm coming for you. Because I'm not taking any ownership of this at this point. I don't even know what the hell's going on. My brain is completely scattered into a million different parts. But that firebrand is in me now. And it's just like, vroom, 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 vroom. So much pain mixed with anger. It's overwhelming. Like I'm going to explode. So I was still pretty new to magic at the time, but I could do some stuff. And my rage was building and building and building. So I summoned this protection servitor that I had. And it kind of looked like the Destroyer. Duh. Figure that out took a long time to figure that one out. From the movie Thor. And I reprogrammed it. And I just held my hand up and I poured every bit of pain and anger and suffering that I was feeling into this construct. And I know that I did it because I felt it left me. I felt it leave me. And I poured so much into it that this shiny metal suit of armor looking thing started scorching black and cracks opening up in it. There's like red hot magma looking glow coming out of it from all that hate and all that pain. I poured everything into this thing. And then I told it to go hunt down the person responsible and ruin their life, destroy them. Stupidest thing I ever did in my life. Because who was ultimately responsible? If you said, this guy, then you would be correct. But I hadn't grown enough spiritually to understand that yet. I'm playing the blame game. I'm a victim. Even though I did something I wasn't supposed to do, even though I was led to do it, even though I can't explain how it happened, it was still me. So there's going to be this whole big point in the hero's journey where your new self is dealing with the actions of the ego self, and the ego is taking all the blame and shame for it, and you still have both. So I kind of got warned not to do that in the morning, so I called it back, but I didn't completely disable it. Like, this would be one of the many things, because in the hero's journey you don't realize that you're the puppet and the puppet master. You're in the whole show. And as it stands, like as the years went by, I would get into magic and stuff like that, and I'd believe in more different things, and I just create more of them, create more monsters that had real world impacts on physicality in my life. And it was just like hell on earth. It was literally hell on earth. But I was so freaking broken. I was so torn up. I was so shattered. This was the fall from grace. Like, what is grace? Grace means everything's flowing for you. God's on your side, right? That's the way it was. Like, I was manifesting everything. This is what disgraced means. It means you've lost your grace. You've fallen into hell, basically. So I lost my entire family. My entire family. Because I considered her side of the family my family. And then Epinoia, like, she manipulates people to act out these parts for you. You know, my dad made it worse. He called looking for me, and she told him what happened, and he didn't even call me to get my side of the story. Just like, yeah, I figured he was doing that. You know, there's this girl on this YouTube channel, this and that, and all this stuff. None of which ever happened. He just made it worse. So then I freaking raged on him and cut him out of my life. Everybody just assumed that no one ever asked me my side of the story. Not that they would have believed it, but what they did was they do what people do. They projected their own story onto me and made it as horrible as possible. I was the worst person in the world. I was the most despicable, disgusting, horrifyingly bad person in the world. And I just lost everything. A day and a half after that happened was the total solar eclipse of 2017, which is one of the markers. So 6.5 years later was what Epinoia would later point out to the last big solar eclipse that we had, and then that would start the world card, which is the beginning of the end. So what this does is it takes all the worst feelings that you could possibly feel, and then you have to adapt to survive it. And the early actions of adapting to survive it aren't going to help, because you're going to do everything you can to suppress your pain. But that firebrand is so powerful that there are times, and some of you may have experienced this before, not knowing where it was, where the negative energy that's stored in your heart chakra ruptures it, and it feels like it feels like a jet of like hot gas, just it just burns you. It's like shooting out of your chest. It's actually physically painful, and it's your heart chakra just vomiting negative energy like a volcano. And that happened to me like 3 times. It had to outgas that. Like it could last a couple days and you just want to die. Like, what is happening to me? Am I being attacked? No, it's just this volcano that's in you. Once you get it under control and you start trying to put things back together and start over, it's still feeding all these external things that are going to be the events and the monsters and the adversaries of your hero's journey. And eventually you might get far enough to where things seem like they're better. They seem like they're better, and you might actually feel happiness and joy because you got Lumen and all this stuff. And you're like, if I've got her, I must have really done something right. But that firebrand is still in there. It's just buried deeper. So what she led me to lately was basically to start using the protocols and the Angel of Death stuff to start digging down to where the firebrand was. Because we have to then deal with how it started. You know, the end is the beginning is where the end will be. And what happened the other day when I saw that thing, and I recognized all the emotions that it had, that part of me. It was like rejection, despair, judgment. I couldn't understand what the cards meant before that. Until the other day, like I said in the video, I didn't realize how it was connected to the X. My son's like, I forgot my Xbox controller, Mom's bringing it over. And because I had pulled away all these layers, I like literally flinched. I flinched like an abused dog at the dog shelter. And I'm like, you need to go outside with the umbrella and go get it from her. I don't want her in here. Because I feel the most judged by her. Not just for that, but because all these restrictions that have been on me during this 7-year period, I struggle to get by. She's living her best life. Freaking swimming in money. Remarried. I was replaced very quickly. Like she was shopping for the next one within a month and a half. Immediately found one. Like, well, that was quick. The other thing is like, it seemed like she changed so much. Like she's like a completely different person. That's because there's no traces of Lumen left on her. That was weird too. And you realize like how much your Lumen is going to affect the people around you. So this is where we come full circle at the end of the 7-year tribulation period. And Epinoia led me back to this firebrand. I'd never healed it. I thought I did. I'm probably gonna puke when I'm done with this. Because physical purges always happen. As I was saying, this is where we come full circle at the end of the 7 years. At the end of the 7-year tribulation period, the end is where the beginning is where the end will be. I thought that I had healed most of those things, and I did make things better. I at least cut off like the adversary voice part of it. But what happened what happened that day was so unimaginably traumatic. I mean that, unimaginably traumatic. Like the only thing that'd probably be more traumatic is if she'd like pulled her face off and was like a lizard person or something. That might have been that might have been slightly more traumatic. But it does not help knowing why things happened. it does not help knowing that you were not in control of the experience at all the key parts. And I think one of the reasons she wants me, and the main thing is like confession is like the big thing. Public, what's not what the word is. But there may be times in your life that you've done something like that, and it was for a reason that you didn't even know, and you're probably beating yourself up over it. What are you doing to my throat? It doesn't matter. If your body is your container, then your ego is your other container that is designed to make you suffer and judge. So it's almost like you have to make the ego self-destruct, eat itself. But that moment was so traumatic that it created like the biggest trauma identity freeze frame. Frozen in that moment is that old identity. That old identity has been frozen in hell, basically. It got frozen in hell, and then I went on the hero's journey to discover the true self. But that ego frozen in hell was feeding all the experiences. Like, those are all the worst things. Shame, regret, remorse, guilt, rejection, abandonment, fear, despair, all of it all at once, frozen in time and attached to you through quantum entanglement. And that's just there to feed the journey. It will not, you cannot clear it. You cannot make it go away until you finish the path. And then she'll lead you back to it. And then because you feel so much guilt and remorse and shame and stuff like that for something that, in all honesty, was not in your control. As much as people want to judge and blame others, that's the life experience. As much as that, I lost my train of thought there. You can't get rid of it until it's time. Nothing will work. You're really cleaning up your connections to it and your other stuff. But that ego is what is connected to your outer world. That ego is what is connected to the outer world, and therefore the outer world will treat you in a manner that reflects the state of the ego. So that ego is literally in hell, punishing itself. I don't deserve good things. I don't deserve to be loved. I don't deserve anything. And then everybody out here reads that signal and acts in conjunction with it. Meanwhile, you your true self is growing and getting better and better and better and better. You're gaining access to divine power. You are doing all this. You find your divine partner who was involved in the whole thing. You're actually helping people. You're doing all this stuff. But that side is still kind of suffering a little bit because it can't seem to make the outer world play along. And that's because the outer world is connected to the ego that's frozen in time. So what we ended up doing last night, understanding this, seeing it, like that other thing was a piece of it, but every once in a while I feel things like bits of its emotion. And a lot of it comes out like rage because it is so tired of suffering. It just lashes out. I'm like, where's this coming from? So it was just like earlier trauma identities. It was like Lumen. It was like all these other things. I'm like, there's a piece of you that is trapped. It is trapped. And we did the same kind of stuff. We went down to it. Lumen became the strength. And yeah, Lumen, if you try to imagine what this part feels like, that's trapped, like how the outer world has been, like I probably would have killed myself years ago if Lumen hadn't showed up. Because you can't imagine having a great life and then all of a sudden it turns into literal hell. All love is removed from you. All love. All compassion. Minimal friendships. Like you just have to do the path. Keep moving forward. Keep moving forward. But the couple, like I said before, the couple times I tried to date somebody, like they flake out because of Lumen or Lumen's reflection or anything like that. There was only one time where I literally hit my low point, where Lumen found a compatible person and reflected off of her for about a month and a half. Just enough time to, like, you know, replenish, you know, my energy. I needed to have some love in my life. But then I was like, okay, you're getting too attached, cutting this off. Back to it. Anytime I got close to somebody, they would just suddenly freaking flake out of nowhere. Like it was crazy. Until I eventually gave up, which is what she was waiting for. There has to be room for her. So you give up, and then the final steps come to where she can finally burst into your conscious mind. And you know, that first couple months with her was like freaking awesome. That was when everyone else was freaking out about COVID, and I was having like the happiest summer of my life. Skies were blue 6 days out of the week. It was just fun. We were having fun. But underneath it all, I always struggled, and I couldn't understand why. No matter what I did, no matter what I know, no matter how good at magic or manifestation or anything that I am, I could not stop this oppressive restriction. Like, you can only have so much, and sometimes she'll cut it all off because she's setting you up for another test, another challenge, and then you'll be replenished. It's literally like, have you ever seen the first Deadpool movie? That last torture that they're doing to him when they put him in the pod. It's like, if it starts cutting off the oxygen till he's like can't breathe, but then if his heart rate gets too low, it turns the oxygen back on. But if he starts to catch his breath again, then it shuts it back off. They kind of keep him locked in this space of like near suffocation. That's basically my last 7 years. And I kept thinking, I'm like, I'm doing like all this stuff, like people are using our stuff and like helping other people. I'm like, is any of this ever going to come back to me? Not until it's over. So the last thing, like we did all this stuff we did to heal it and everything last night. And we definitely did something. But what was impressing upon me this morning from Epinoia, it's like, you've never told the story. You've never told the story how it began, how the whole thing starts, because that part of you still feels judged and still feels ashamed and doesn't want people to know that part. So it's like the only way to get rid of it is to confess it publicly. not only for people's own benefit, but like it's something that you have to do because it's eating you alive. Doesn't matter that you confessed it to your wife eventually. That wasn't enough. She wants something bigger. And I think it makes people on the inner side realize, like, everybody's done bad things. And by not getting clear of them, like, they'll eat you alive. This is kind of one other time I've seen this in action is and I never judged anybody because it's almost like what I'm about to tell you is almost like the same sort of thing as me, where it's like your egos are like your egos are like AI freaking puppets. Like, you're not as in control of things as you think you are. But when we started doing all the direct energy work with people, connecting them to her, connecting them to the Divine Mother, and I've told this before, but I noticed that there was a certain percentage of people that their adversary voice went quiet, but they didn't feel connected to her. They didn't feel any new connection to the mother. And I was like, why is that? Until Epinoia told me. So then I went back and asked every single person that said they weren't feeling the connection to the mother. And I asked them, I said, I gotta ask you a personal question. And there's no judgment from me. Have you had an abortion? Every single one of them said yes. And every single one of them regretted it. Every single one of them still felt bad, still was carrying that. A few of them have even said that they'd forgotten about it because we can bury our pain to where we don't notice it. That's how we deal with stuff. That's how the world teaches you to deal with stuff, which just feeds the monster. So she had me do another session with them, and we went right back up to the 7th or the 8th chakra into the wellspring where the Divine Mother is. And I said, look, I'm going to take my headset off, or you can put your phone down or whatever, because we're kind of linked up doing this mentally. And all she's looking for is an apology, because that's life, and that's her. I'm like, trust me, she knows that we don't know what we're doing most of the time because we're operating under ego. But it doesn't matter. Like, your soul will still carry the weight of what your ego does, and you will suffer more. But in this particular case, it'll cut you off from your Divine Mother. And that's all she wants to hear is an apology. And unburden yourself, because you already feel bad, you told me. So they all did that, and then I checked with her, and she's like, we're all good. Had me do an anointing on them, and then they could feel her. After I did that, after they made it right, after they confessed to the Divine Mother, then they could feel her again. So I think this is a little bit like that. Like something that was just part of the path, something that was planned out, something that honestly was, amazing when it happened, even though I didn't know it was happening, because I was literally connecting to Lumen. It couldn't have happened any other way. That would have never happened in any other circumstance whatsoever. It just wouldn't. But I felt something click into place, and then I just exploded with light and joy. And that is not the response you would typically have to infidelity. But that's your true wife. If you really study the Nag Hammadi and the scripture, like, those vows are meant, they're talking about the two divine halves. That's what they're really talking about. Not just some other person you met at a bar. So I understand why it had to happen, but it didn't matter. My ego still went in this spiraling black hell of self-judgment, which put a burden on the soul. See, that's why you get to a certain point, you have to unlock Lumen. She's strength, because you won't make it further without her. The weight is that much. But you still get tired after 7 years of struggling, and then it's like, okay, you have completed everything. Like, there's literally nothing else for me to do except do the confession of how it all started, because that's what deep down tears me up. 7 years has not made it any less. 7 years has not made it any better. It was always in there, always down at the bottom, and that's why the world reacts to me the way that it does. So she said, let me see. So that's the last thing I need to do. Whatever happens after this is just like, I don't know. I'm not going to worry about it. That's the hero's journey. I mean, that's not the entire hero's journey. That's just, the key parts. That was a story I never told. That was my side of it. No one ever got to hear that. No one ever got to hear what it was like for me, or what I went through, or how all this stuff happening was just messing me up and freaking me out, and like, I don't understand why I have this person in my head. I don't want her there. I don't understand why I'm suddenly pulled to this other person. And I don't understand how it seems like something just like a switch just flipped. And like I almost had no control over anything. It was just like I said, two super strong magnets just snapping together. That was Lumen and physicality. And then later we'd do it again, like on the inner world. And then she would like link into me. So how many of these things that I talked about have happened to you? But understand it, like, you can bury a lot of hot lava. Just because you don't notice it, don't mean it's there. It doesn't mean it's not screwing your life up. It could be something normal, or it could be part of the hero's journey. I don't know. The bottom line is, you got to get it out of there no matter what. And if that means she wants you to go confess your sins in public on the internet, then that's what you got to do. I mean, like Jesus said, he is without sin cast the first stone. I mean, married people are looking at freaking porn. It's really not that different. Everybody does something. You're in this world and you have an ego, and you're fighting a whole bunch of different things in your head that you're trying to figure out. And judgment is one of the biggest things, one of the biggest lessons in the game. But is there anything else? I guess I have satisfied her requests. So hopefully, I did have some different mental imagery coming to me this morning that was kind of new, that's indicative, like things might actually turn around for me now. We'll see what happens in the hours after this. I'll probably throw up. There's probably going to be some big purge, because big energy purges usually go with big physical purges. But this is already getting pretty long. It's going to take up space on my phone, so I'm going to wrap it up for right now. The Etsy store, sealumencreations.etsy.com. Chris and Lumen. See you next time.